Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Today we are diving into a truly fascinating intellectual exercise. We're looking at a text by author Xu titled Challenging the Foundation of Evolutionary Theory. Now, our goal here isn't to debate or to take sides. Instead, we're going to objectively map out the author's strict logical deconstruction of evolutionary theory. We'll take their foundational premises and push them to their absolute limits exactly as the text does. So let's explore how the author breaks this all down.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for the text. First, questioning evolution's foundation. Second, the 6 core tenets. Third, deductions regarding the animal kingdom. Fourth, deductions on humanity and conflict. And finally, the unchanging human essence. We're going to follow the text's exact path, from foundational premises all the way to extreme deductions.
All right, starting right off with Section 1, Questioning Evolution's Foundation.
So, the author kicks things off with a pretty bold premise. They argue that to truly analyze evolution, we first have to reject the Big Bang, and reject the idea that life just accidentally arose from water. The reasoning? Without an initial spark, evolution is left as a shaky castle in the sky. To illustrate this foundational problem, the author poses a classic paradox. Without an egg, where does the chicken come from? And without a chicken, where do eggs come from?
The author immediately takes that same paradox and applies it straight to biology. Which came first, protein or DNA? Because, you see, DNA formation depends entirely on the presence of protein. But without an initial protein presence, DNA simply cannot form. For the author, this inescapable loop means the lack of an initial life source fundamentally breaks the theory of evolution before it can even begin.
Moving right along to Section 2, the 6 core tenets. Now, what's really interesting about this part is how the author sets the ground rules before attempting to deconstruct them.
Rather than just attacking the theory blindly, the author strictly defines the rules of the game according to their reading of evolution. According to the text, the first 3 tenets are as follows. Number 1, life had to exist before evolution could happen. Number 2, these initial lives are exactly what evolved into the incredibly diverse array of life forms we see on Earth today. And number 3, the evolution of these organisms is the strict result of heredity, variation, and natural selection. Those are the baseline mechanics, strictly according to the source material.
Then, the final 3 tenets focus heavily on the brutality of it all. Tenet 4 states evolution is governed by the logic of survival of the fittest and the law of the jungle. Tenet 5 claims that when a species can't adapt to an environment, it evolves into another species. And Tenet 6, which is absolutely crucial for the author's later arguments, states that due to brutal competition, the weak are naturally eliminated, leaving behind only the strong. This elimination of the weak is the core engine that drives the rest of the logical deductions we're about to see. Let's move to Section 3 and see how this builds. We're looking at deductions regarding the animal kingdom. So if we apply those strict rules, specifically that the weak absolutely must be eliminated or evolve, we can trace the author's exact logic. If weaker animals have only one path to species reproduction and survival, they must inevitably evolve into the stronger animals that prey on them. Therefore, insects being weaker than birds must evolve into birds. Herbivores being weaker than carnivores must evolve into carnivores, and carnivores being weaker than humans must undoubtedly evolve into humans to survive. And following that exact logical chain, the text points to a pretty surprising endpoint. The final outcome of survival of the fittest means that earthworms, flies, dung beetles, cobras, and dogs all originate from the same ancestor and will eventually evolve into humans. The author even applies this to dinosaurs. They deduce that due to deteriorating ecological conditions, some dinosaurs evolved into humans, while others became lions and wolves, just to ensure their survival. Now for Section 4, Deductions on Humanity and Conflict. As we transition from the animal kingdom to human society, the author applies the exact same logic to historical conflict. It is very important to note that the author uses these politically charged historical examples impartially, strictly as logical proofs to test the theory's validity.
The author deduces that under the rules of evolution, humans survive basically by plundering and killing each other. If the strong prey on the weak, then strong nations can only remain invincible by actively eliminating weak nations. Therefore, according to the text, all plundering and killing wars throughout history perfectly align with evolutionary theory.
And the text pushes this even further into the philosophical extreme. The author claims that under evolutionary logic, acts of kindness toward other species or groups are actually cruel to one's own race. Conversely, cruelty toward others is a kindness to your own.
Therefore, whether it's burning, killing, looting, or cheating, any means used to eliminate the weak and strengthen oneself are theoretically completely justified by the laws of evolution.
So the crucial point is how the author uses a horrific historical atrocity not as an endorsement, but as a classic philosophical technique called reductio ad absurdum, basically reducing an argument to absurdity. The logic is clear. If the theory of evolution is true, then the brutal elimination of the weak is justified. Therefore, under that specific scientific theory, Hitler's actions would logically be deemed 100% correct. Because we know fundamentally that this outcome is horrific and totally false, the author uses this extreme deduction to argue that the underlying theory of evolution must therefore be inherently flawed. To really hammer home the absurdity of endless evolutionary adaptation, the author throws in this wild, almost sci-fi hypothetical. If humans must continuously evolve to survive changing environments and threats, the text argues that humans will eventually grow wings on their backs, develop eyes on the back of their heads, breathe out fireworks, and literally emit laser light from their eyes. It's a highly engaging storytelling way for the author to illustrate just how far the logic of endless physical adaptation can be pushed. Which brings us to Section 5, the unchanging human essence. This is where the author resolves the narrative arc and explains why they ultimately conclude evolution is a false premise.
And this brilliantly illustrates the author's core thesis. On one hand, we see the illusion of evolution. Humans appear to get smarter and more capable generation after generation, sure, but the author argues this is entirely due to stored, accumulated knowledge. On the other hand, we see the reality of unchanged biology. The essence of human life, our genes, is static. It hasn't changed since ancient times. Our ancestors had 2 eyes and their blood was red. Today, we still have 2 eyes and our blood is still red. We haven't gained or lost any structural organs. Our physical and biological essence remains entirely static. To finalize the point, the author offers a hypothetical test. If evolution were the real deal, human babies, being the ultimate predators, would be born ready to run immediately, just like baby deer or zebras. Plus, monkey and ape brains would be pretty similar to humans in learning, memory, and thinking. But because human babies are notoriously helpless at birth, and because our bodily structures remain unchanged, the author strictly deduces that human evolution is a myth.
So, what does this all mean? We've reached the end of the author's deconstruction, and the text leaves us with one final prompt. The author mentions they will delve further into biological evolution in future chapters, specifically in what they call the greatest creator chapter of Life Shinyan. They invite the reader to continue contemplating these issues, and I invite you to do exactly the same. Whether you agree or disagree, exploring these philosophical deductions challenges us to think deeply about the foundational theories we just accept as fact. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and keep looking at the fascinating structures of the ideas around us.